Welcome back to Workplace Wellness Strategies. I am your host, Derek Anderson with the Elevate Performance Group. Today we have an amazing guest. She is the founder of an incredible HR company called Let There Be HR, and she is a strong personal health and wellness advocate. Her name is Ms. Kayla Moncayo. Kayla, how are you today?
Hi, Derek. I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you for your time to join us. It's a pleasure, and the audience is going to love it. So, if I may ask you, what makes you passionate about health and wellness? We've talked about it before, and I just want you to kind of share your experiences and what drives you to pursue it.
Absolutely. I mean, I started in HR about 13 years ago, and even before I began in HR, it was pretty clear to me, whether it was my family members or my parents, that the way that their bodies felt and how well their bodies were directly impacted their ability to work. I come from a Mexican family and an immigrant family, so for quite a bit of our lives, we were poor. Frankly, we were impoverished, and our bodies really were the only way that we could make money, labor and just getting out there in the workforce. Once I joined HR and really started to grow in my career, as well as experience some wellness issues in my own journey, it was clear to me that there was such a broader connection between the way that employees could show up and the way that employees felt and their physical and mental wellness. And so it's just been a passion truly since I was young, but much more so and much more refined in my career.
Thank you for sharing that. So, human resources, do you feel like it was something you were always kind of destined to do, just based off your experiences growing up? And then I'm sure you love to help others as well. Like, do you have experiences as a kid, like always being that emotional support for your best friends and they'd always kind of lean on you or things like that?
Absolutely, but I had no idea that HR was even an industry or a field. Again, I think because my parents were in sort of these non-traditional working roles, my father actually ended up going into the military and made an amazing career in that. But HR isn't something that you hear about, in the military too often. And so it wasn't a conversation where I knew, oh, I could be an engineer or I could be a doctor or I could be an HR. We were, like I said, really, really poor growing up. And college was never a thought or an idea for me. And so at 18, I hit the workforce and I started as a bartender. And I realized I really was good with people. I loved listening to people, I loved learning about people. And I had an amazing friend who was a recruiter. And at 18, she came to me and said, I think you're good with people. And I distinctly remember telling her, I think I'm good with drunk people because that's all I had really worked with at the time. And she had a position that she was trying to fill, and it was a contract role, and it was like the most entry level HR role ever, which was exactly what I was qualified to do at 18. And I interviewed and landed the role, and then my career took off from there. So I think that HR does have a reputation for helping people. And I think what I've connected with is less about helping people and more about informing and supporting employees about their rights, whether that's under the Americans with Disabilities Act or whether that's just about minimum wage, right? So I love helping, but I really think my career has taken off because I have this deep passion for making sure that employees know their rights and employers uphold those rights.
That's amazing. And as you know, it can be intimidating for people to express what they're going through and to come from a place of compassion. It makes you easier to talk to, and especially when you enjoy it, because a lot of what people can put on you, like I experienced this as a coach myself, is it can be kind of draining unless you have that passion for helping others, right? So I think that's something that makes you great at it because you're really easy to talk to. On a side note, really quick, what was the best specialty drink you made as a bartender? I'm just kind of curious.
Oh, oh my gosh, what a great question. Okay, so I don't know if I had a specialty drink, but I will tell you a very funny short story about a group of gentlemen who came into the bar on a bachelor party and asked me for a really specialty drink. So they come in and we're slammed and they ask for an alien head shot. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I have not.
No. It's so rare and random and specialty, and it looks like an actual head of an alien in the clear shot glass.
Whoa.
And I mean, again, like read the room, right? The bar is slammed. I'm the only bartender. Like, there's no way I'm gonna make 17 of these. And so he's like, hey, I know this is random, but we've got like 17 guys here. Can you make 17 alien headshots? And I looked right at him and I said, I'm pouring tequila. Do you want tequila? And he goes, yeah, we'll take 17 tequila shots. And I was like, perfect. So I feel like I wasn't this like very specialized bartender. I was your typical like dive bar bartender, but I could handle people who wanted those specialty drinks pretty well. I was like, the tequila is gonna get you where you want to go, so you might as well take it.
Did you ever look up what was the actual alien headshot was?
Yeah, I did. I Googled it after my shift and I was like, I don't even think I had all of the ingredients to make
Oh,
this,
man.
let alone the skill set, right? Like, I think a barista could probably make that better than I could just with the latte art. So I'm glad I didn't even attempt because it probably would have disappointed them pretty bad.
That's so awesome. I'm gonna have to look that up right when we're done because I'm curious now. So, side note, real quick. I know you've probably seen The Office, and the audience has as well. It's a popular show, but I remember how much Michael Scott hated Toby. And as a teenager watching it, in the early 2000s, it gave a bad rap to HR. But what I've come to learn is some of the most amazing people in the world who, they really care about each other and their teams. So we previously touched on it, like providing resources to people to improve their lifestyle and their emotions and their work performance. They might not always know benefits that they have that are available to them. And it kind of gets brushed over a lot of times. So, are there any key resources that you provide or have seen provided that people may not always know they have?
Absolutely. First off, Toby is the most underrated character I think of The Office, and I connect quite a bit with Toby in many ways. But I think in general, it depends on the type of company that you're in. So if you're in a fairly established company, even if that's a startup and you're receiving benefits through your employer, they always have something called an employee assistance program. They'll call it an EAP. And it's a pretty remarkable program that has the lowest utilization of almost any benefit in the US. It is an anonymous program. It's anonymous, for everyone. So your employer doesn't know if you call or who calls. All they know is a person utilized this benefit. And it depends on the insurance carrier, but you tend to get 3, 6, or 8 free therapy sessions per issue. And they actually give you an example of times or experiences where you may want to utilize that. Sometimes it's finances. Are your finances really stressful and you don't know who to turn? You could call EAP. Are you raising a teenager and that's really freaking hard? You could call EAP. Or maybe you're struggling with depression, anxiety, work performance concerns. You can call and you just say, I'm an employee of this company, and they will get you to the right people. What I've also experienced is that maybe you don't get to a solution or you're not done with the conversation after those free sessions. EAP will actually help you find somebody that is in network and available to take you as a client moving forward. So maybe you just want to establish services with a mental health provider, but you don't know how. EAP can help you do that as well. So I think it's one of the most underrated and underutilized benefits that the majority of Americans have if they receive benefits through their employer. And I wish more people would take advantage of it.
Thanks for sharing about EAP because I myself have actually not heard of that. And that sounds like a really diverse program when you can tackle so many things in one spot. Do you have any idea what the percentage of usage might be? It's ballpark
Park
number?
number?
Again, it depends. I've been in tech and startup for the majority of my career and actually started my career in the government sector. And so I can give you some ballpark figures around there. Tech and startup, I've never seen it more than 8%, which just always breaks my heart a little bit. And then in government, I've never seen it more than 6%. So actually utilized
6%.
less.
Wow.
Absolutely. I wish that we could help employees understand how truly anonymous it is. So, like all of your benefits, we as the employer will receive a utilization report and we'll understand, hey, of our 100 employees, 2 employees received cancer treatment and 1 employee received treatment for asthma. We never know who that employee is. That's protected under HIPAA. It's the exact same way for EAP. So if you are my employer, Derek, and I call EAP, and at the end of the year, you get a utilization report. All you're going to see is one person called EAP. You're not going to even know my gender or anything about me. And so I think that it is such a vulnerable place to be utilizing a resource from your employer about stuff that you probably don't want them to know about. And so I just really want to stress it is fully anonymous and it is sponsored by the health insurance company. And so that health insurance company has a federal regulation to keep your information private. And that's why they'll never be able to share that information with your employer.
That's amazing. And that's something that we try to do also is reporting because a lot of times employers might not really know how they can fully help. They might have like a ballpark view of their issues or pain points, but not the detail. And so as a personal coach, we build that trust. They can share with us more, and then we provide that information back anonymously and like provide solutions how to fix it where you can handle it in-house or continue working with us. Um, Going into the link in employee wellness between physical and mental, I feel like there's a big disconnect. Like a lot of employers right now will provide their team like here's a gym membership we'll pay for, or pick something on your own and we'll refund or reimburse you for it. But the problem with that is it gets a really low participation rate, just like the other programs we talked about. So if you really want to see an improvement in your team and your productivity and retention and all of that, you really need that high usage rate. And speaking of stats, in terms of like physical provided programs from a company, the average usage rate is only 26%. And if the business really wants to see an improvement or a return on their investment, you need that number in the 60s. And so that's something we always try to do is to get that number high. But in your experience, have you noticed a disconnect between physical and mental health? Have you seen employers focus more on the physical side and less on the mental? Or is it an issue where the employee feels a sense of fear to fully explain what they're going through with their stress levels and everything like that?
I think that my experience in the last 13 years has led me to some pretty strong opinions about this, and that is that employers um, have have failed employees in this area and continue to do so, even with statistics like what you just read out. The disconnect between mental health and physical health on the employer side is is so far disconnected that when you are somebody like you or somebody like me is attempting to show that there is a connect, it's almost like we're on one continent and another continent and we're trying to bring them together. And so much of that comes from leadership at the top. I'm talking your C suite that don't believe in or don't want to invest in mental health support as much as they do physical support. Some of that is also the law, right? The law just hasn't caught up with what is actually happening in American society. And so without those laws, organizations are left to either figure it out and fend for themselves or just not participate at all. So the disconnect is massive. I'll also say, though, to your second point, that most Americans, myself included, that have any type of disability or mental health struggle, physical health struggle, they're really worried about bringing that up to their employer for legitimate reasons. We have seen over centuries how quickly employers will terminate people, regardless of how illegal it is, because they have a disability or because they are struggling through a mental health issue. So the disconnect is real. I think the fear is real. And it is almost like this perfect storm where then we have incredible professionals like you that are trying to come in and educate on what wellness really is and not what we have trained people to believe wellness is, simply from the employer standpoint.
Where do you think that the disconnect from the C-suite comes from outside of the law? Do you think it's maybe a lack of understanding, or is it they don't see the importance as well? Like it just seems like another expense.
I see a few things. I think there is a generational issue. Most of the C suite, the generation that they're in, it was just mental health and wellness was not something that was discussed and they weren't educated on it. And so it's another area where they have to educate themselves and their desire to do that isn't as high as we would want it to be. I also see it as um, there is not enough research in the area of employers that the C-suite can lean on or HR folks can lean on to try to show how important, mental health and mental wellness is up until recently. So a lot of the times you'll get the C-suite and I'll be speaking with them and they'll just say, "Oh, they look at me like Toby. It's just another ridiculous HR idea or it's just another, you know, plight that the younger generation has." When it's facts and there's real data that we're now seeing. So I think that's a big piece. The last thing I'll say is I actually think that there is a significant amount of fear in the C-suite about mental health and mental wellness because for the last 20 so years, the ADA has said, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA has said, hey, a mental health issue is equal to a physical disability. And so then we teach the C suite, we being HR folks, teach the C suite, don't talk about it. It's a protected right. HIPAA is real and we don't want them to talk about it because we don't want to violate their HIPAA rights. And so we sort of skewed toward this very cautious, really detrimental practice of not discussing any mental health because we are so afraid of a lawsuit or we're so afraid that the C suite will handle it poorly. And that has just resulted in further decline in our employee base.
I have noticed that trend as well, that they may not fully feel comfortable or know what to do, but they are trying with things like specialty seminars or webinars, especially with the hybrid place. The only issue that I see with that is it's not relative to everybody. Like, I've been asked to do a webinar on let's fix sedentary lower back pain. That's great, and it's going to help somebody, but it's not going to help everyone's individualized issues and pain points. So I think that's where like a personal element like you and I can really help, where we can work with someone individually to tackle what's best for them, and they're going to see more value in that. And that's when they can really up those participation rates.
Yeah, I also think there is this really interesting experience. I don't know if you've experienced it, but I certainly have, where the attempt and from the C-suite or from any organization is honorable, but it's actually remarkably exclusive. So when you're asked to give a seminar about lower back pain because we're sitting so long, that doesn't help anybody that's in a wheelchair. That doesn't
Right.
help anybody. So while I think the intention and the intent is really really positive, there's also this idea that we have fairly exclusionary mindsets around what health and wellness is. And when at the top of the episode you talked about, oh, we just give a gym membership, or which is so common, that's fairly ableist. That's assuming that every single person in your workforce can actually utilize a gym physically.
Right.
So I do think that the disconnect is also um, inadvertently or advertently, ableist and exclusionary.
Yeah, and like those gym memberships, it's a great thing, and a lot of people might want to use it, but it can be an intimidating place, and there's a lot of fine detail in here to stay safe and healthy without hurting yourself. And sometimes people consider it a luxury item. They won't spend the time to learn for themselves. So that's where we can come in and help. I can help someone feel confident and safe in that environment. It's going to make a big impact. And also with webinars and seminars, as we talked about, like maybe the employer not fully understanding what they're going through. The example I like to use is like when you're a teenager and you're depressed or you're going through something and your parents know something's wrong and they try to ask you like, what's going on? And you might give them a little bit but not the full detail because you're scared, you're maybe feel you might be judged or something. So it's kind of a similar construct, I feel like, in the corporate world.
I agree. And I would say, how many people in corporate that are in C suite are parents? Quite
Ooh.
a few, right? And so I think their own background and experience in, oh, my teenager or my child is going through something, they'll just come to me, or I'll just make an assumption. Whether that's good, bad, right, or wrong, I think that what happens is we bring our personal experiences at work and into work. And if you're a parent and that's sort of the way that you're parenting, it makes sense that that might be the way that you are handling the workforce, right? Like it's there and they'll come to me instead of recognizing the intimidation factor with that.
For sure. And I am really glad you brought up the ADA. and that they're starting to consider mental health issues relative to physical, because that's one thing I really am aiming to do is that mind body connection. So back in 2300 BC, Aristotle had a rec center and was helping people with this. And we've slowly moved away from that to where Western culture we see the mind and body as two separate things. But in order for your body to be strong, you have to have a strong mind. You have to have that motivation to pursue that goal. And vice versa. Your body needs to be strong so you can tackle the issues here. So that makes me really happy that they are starting to collaborate and get back to that, because that's one of my main goals. One thing we talked about was fear, like being scared to tell someone else, maybe not just your employer, but your family and friends, what you're going through. But there also is a positive side to fear, I feel like. Um, if there is, what does that mean to you?
You know what? I think that I want to always hold space for if you have fear and you have even witnessed other people on your team come forward and been retaliated against, listen to that fear. But if there isn't anything behind it, meaning you haven't seen your leadership or somebody handle something in a really poor way, do it scared, right? The things that we do that are new to us, regardless of our emotions, like build these epic neural pathways in our brains that do work through that mind body connection, like you're talking about. And so I can't tell you how many employees I've coached where they're like, I'm just scared to tell them that I need time to, to have therapy in the middle of the week. And I'll say, okay, do it scared and watch that confidence rise and give people the opportunity to either meet your expectations or not meet your expectations, and then come talk to me if they don't meet your expectations, right? And we can work through it. But
Totally.
I think let's do it scared. Let's try something new.
Exactly. I love that you ended with new, because I was just going to say a lot of times fear, being nervous, or things like that come from when something is new. But to further pursue your growth, you have to try new things. Um, if I may ask you, what is something in your professional life or personal life that you were horrified of doing and eventually did it and it got progressively easier to lead you to the point of growth where you are now?
Yeah, I'll give you two, one professional and one personal. This seems small, but for me, professionally, it wasn't. As I said earlier, my family was not well off. And when I started in HR, I realized this was my ticket out of poverty, and not just a ticket out of poverty for money, but because I loved it. I was good at it. I was crazy about it. And no one at my workplace knew that I had lupus. I was very quiet about it. I didn't want anyone to know. And I had been diagnosed fairly young. So I've been living with lupus for quite a while. One of the problems that I have with lupus is, I have some joint pain and joint issues. And so I need a wireless mouse, not just an ergonomic one, but a wireless one, because sometimes I have to switch from my right hand to my left because my right hand will start to be fatigued due to the lupus. And I was brand new in HR, and I was with all of these really amazing people that I looked up to and wanted to impress. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified to ask for a wireless mouse, which sounds so silly. But to me, the terror came from they're going to think less of me because I need something. They're going to have to spend money on me, and I'm just this like peon. I'm barely in. I'm entry level. And then my next fear was that they would think that I couldn't do the job because I do have lupus, and maybe they didn't know what lupus was, and did they think it was contagious, right? This was, 13 years ago. So it was quite a while ago. And I realized about 2 weeks into the role that I was not going to be able to do this job without a wireless mouse. And I went to my HR director and I was just open and honest. And I said all of the things I like word vomited. And she was like, I literally have like a drawer full of wireless mouses. Like I'll give you one, right. You do not have to like, prepare a dissertation for me. And that, while I was so lucky that that was my experience, was the best first experience I could have had. I had really bad experiences later on in my career and have been with employees that have, but in general, it was this clearly 13 years later, like defining moment in my life of I can't be who you need me to be unless I have some of the tools to give me equal access. So terrified, did it, and I'm still rocking the wireless ergonomic
Hey.
mouse to this day. And then the next, personally and just sort of silly, I grew up an athlete in many ways, but was very, very scared to lift weights in the gym for a multitude of reasons. I was scared to hurt myself. I was scared that I would be really bulky because I am a cis woman and I like to look feminine. Um, and I was really intimidated by everybody at the gym who seemingly knew so much more than I did. And finally, I just said, well, I'm never going to be as strong as I want to be if I don't try. And I started trying and I like failed a lot. And I looked up so many YouTube videos and finally found like an epic gym with an epic community. It was actually a bodybuilding gym. So people that were like way more advanced than me, and there were people that were like in their 50s who were like retired from bodybuilding, but still in the habit. And they would just take me under their wing. I would literally walk up to a random person at the gym and I would say, hey, I see you're on this machine. I've always wanted to try it. I don't know how. Will you teach me? I cannot express to you the joy that people have in the gym if you ask them that. I never received a response that made me feel stupid or dumb. And now I can't tell you how many of my friends, my girlfriends, I've like created a weightlifting plan for and like done so many videos of like, here's how to use this machine. Like, don't be intimidated, take up space. Like, the gym will change your life in good ways. So I'm hoping those two will resonate somewhere with your audience. But doing it afraid taught me so much about myself and put me in a place where I feel ready to advocate for people in all areas of their own fear.
Those are both amazing stories, and I bet that after the first time, right? The second time you had to ask someone in the gym for help, or the second time you had to ask your employer for something, it was probably still hard that second time, but maybe a little bit easier, right? And then every time after that, now you probably feel pretty comfortable, yeah? And you want to share that experience with others to help them get to that same level of growth?
Oh, yeah. I'm too comfortable now. I'm definitely not someone that you would consider quiet by any means. I think to your point, the second, third, eighth, 10th time, maybe my heart rate was still high because I was nervous, but it was lower and lower. And even when I had negative experiences where I would ask someone very rarely at the gym and they didn't want to help me, or I would talk to my employer and I got a negative response, because I had already faced the fear, the response didn't cripple me. The response didn't knock me down and make me not continue to advocate. It was just a moment where I had to like recalibrate and go, oh, okay. But I think because I was able to continue to do new things and say, all right, heart rate, I get it. Like we call it kind of no AC. I tell my team it's like no AC. It's like when you do something and you're afraid, you're somehow in a room with no AC. You get warmer, your cheeks get flushed, your heart rate goes up, you start to sweat, and you just learn how to push through that. And while that's a privileged place and a privileged thing to say, because there are many people that they can't make that gamble with their employer, I do think that if you start to practice it in your personal life at the gym or wherever, you're going to see that you are much more likely to be comfortable doing it in your professional life too.
Thank you so much for sharing. For me, it it's been about being open with my emotions. I've always or was always like scared to be open, and I don't know where I got it from because both of my parents were always really open. So I don't know where I learned the behavior from, but once I learned to do that, so I grew up chronically depressed, not so much anxiety, just always kind of down. And once I learned to share with others my experience, that's helped me be an amazing coach because if I share what I feel or went through to someone else, they're more comfortable to open up to me and then I can help them better. And so, yeah, so now when you do, a webinar about mental health or depression or how to overcome it, it feels great to talk about it. I'm not ashamed anymore, like, because it's going to help somebody else. It's actually, I kind of try to see it or any obstacle as a gift now. Because once you go through that, you can transform that into a positive that can help you grow and also help somebody else grow. It's like with fear. You see fear as like a track runner coming up to a hurdle or a speed bump. A lot of people get there like, oh, this is too much, it's intimidating, we'll turn around and go the other way. But try to see that roadblock as a positive thing because if it's a new roadblock, it means you are getting closer to your goals and to where you want to be. Any new thing you encounter If you go over it, under it, around it, through it, whatever the case may be, you are that much closer to your ultimate destination. So, anyone listening, I encourage you, whatever you want to do, if you have something in your life that's stressing you out right now, take it head on. It's a good thing. It means you're getting closer to your goals.
That's so true. First off, thank you for being open about your depression and about, I think, the way that you faced your fears and talking about it, because we need more people like you to just say that outright. And if you are like me and you're somebody, when you see an obstacle, you just thinking of it as a positive thing is not how your brain is wired. I just tend to get angry at it. I'm like, there's a hurdle in my way. So maybe I don't see it as positive in the moment, but I'm pretty pissed that it's there. I'll remove it. And then afterward, I think I can be positive. So I think, the idea of just looking at hurdles as more than a stop. It's not a stop. It's just something in your way, whether you think it's positive or negative, however you want to look at it, whatever emotions you need to get through it. It is not a wall. It's not a U-turn. It's not a turnaround, right? It's just I got to go about this a different way.
Absolutely. And real quick, another example is anytime, as an athlete yourself, any injury you've gone through, it's frustrating and it limits you for a minute. But what I'd learned to do early on was in physical therapy, learn as much as I could, ask questions, right? Let's say you had like a patella tendonitis, like find out exactly why. So every time I've been hurt, take that knowledge and I can help somebody else now who's had the same issue and I know exactly how to get them through it. So little things like that in any situation, if you ask questions and be open about your experience, you can learn all of that information to help others at a higher level.
So true. Great example.
Real quick, Kayla, let's talk about Let There Be HR. What's your mission with it and what are you looking to do and accomplish?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, our mission is to provide equal access to success through business and HR support. And I founded Let There Be HR because I realized once I left the government and went into startup that people were experiencing the HR that they could afford, not the HR that they deserved. And some of those people are absolutely employers and small businesses who can't afford rock star HR people that are like me and help companies IPO, right? Or like people on my team that are the absolute best. My regional directors can do like the Cirque du Soleil like level of HR, but that there's a price tag to that. And it doesn't feel right to not allow people and organizations at every level of their financial journey to have HR support, good HR support that people at Google get, right? And so that's what we do. But we don't just do HR. We also do a lot of business consulting. I can help you balance any P&L or any finance that you need. Our team is so diverse, and their ability to find the path for success for employees as well as for employers. So we have an entire employee services side. I'm going to be so honest with you. What we've seen the most this year is we've been providing a lot of layoff support to people that have been laid off recently, employees that need to get back on their feet. We can do your resume, we can do all of that. And then we have full business and HR support on the employer side as well.
Sounds like such an amazing program and super diverse because a lot of it is so niche focused and you're doing a lot of amazing things. So I commend you for that for sure.
Thank you.
Can you please tell the audience where they can find you, website, LinkedIn page, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, you can find us everywhere, either website or any social media at lettherebehr.com. And you can always come and find me on LinkedIn, Kayla Moncayo. I'm right there. And I'd love to connect with any of your audience because you have been such a pleasure to chat with, Derek. And I know that people listening to you are probably a lot like you, and it would be a pleasure to connect with them.
I will drop all of her info, guys, in the descriptions of the YouTube and Spotify links. You can go check her out. Make sure you connect. Kayla, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, Derek. Have a great day.